And then finally, moving on to number 4, the more challenging one. So we got 3 times 8 factorial plus 9 times 7 factorial all over 6 factorial plus 7 factorial. So notice now that we have this plus in the numerator and denominator, which does make things more complex versus if they're just multiplying. Because it's tougher to just cancel stuff out. You have to first factor stuff, and then those factor terms, hopefully they can cancel in the numerator and denominator. So I'm going to start with the 6 factorial plus 7 factorial, just show you how it works here. Now this we can rewrite as what? 6 times 5 times 4 dot 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 times 2 times 1. So that's the 6 factorial. Let's put this in square brackets. And then we got the plus 7 factorial. So that's going to be 7 times 6 times 5 dot 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 times 2 times 1, like that. So what we can do here, if we were to factor this, right, we're going to have to factor the numerator and the denominator for stuff to simplify. To factor here, what we can take out is the smallest factorial. Because notice that 6 times 5 times all the way to 2 times 1 is common in both. Those multiplications are common in both. So we can take that out from both. And what would we be left with? Well, over here, we would just be left with 1. And then over here, we'd be left with a 7. Okay, just a quick review. If I got like ABC plus ABCD, right, which is kind of like what's happening here. These are multiplying, then we got the addition. This could be addition or subtraction, so I'll just put a plus and minus, keep it more general. If I was to factor this, what can I factor out of these two terms? We could factor out an A, B, C. That's what's common in both of these. And what would we be left with? Well, we would just, to find out what's left, we would divide both of these by A, B, C. That's what we took out. So notice all of these cancel. This is just a 1. Plus, these cancel out. We're just left with D right there. Okay, so just in general, that's what's happening with the factoring. Same thing, exact same thing here. These are all multiplying. It's just there's more things multiplying here. So it might have been tougher to see initially, right? But we're just factoring. And so what would end up happening is this would end up being 6 factorial, and we'd be left with 1 plus 7, so this would end up being 8. Okay, so this 6 factorial plus 7 factorial is the exact same as 6 factorial times 8. And this is the process of how you get that, right? Because that 7 and that 1 are left. Let's say this was 8 factorial. Then what would be left? There would be an 8 here. We still take out the lowest one, 6 factorial, but instead of just a 7, we'd have an 8 times a 7. So this would be 56, this would be 57, this bracket. So we'd have 57 times 6 factorial. That's what this would equal. Okay, so that's how we factor dealing with permutations or factorial. So applying that here, first off, notice in the numerator we could take out a 3 from both of these. So let's actually just work with this on this side here. So we got 3 times 8 factorial plus 9 times 7 factorial. So the factorials I'm going to deal with separately, and then the numbers I'm going to deal with separately. So notice the 3 and the 9, we could take out a 3, and then from the factorials we could take out the lowest one, which would be 7 factorial. And so what would we be left with when we factor 3, 7 factorial? Well, we would just divide this by 3, 7 factorial, divide this by 3, 7 factorial. So notice here the 3's cancel out. 8 factorial over 7 factorial, we'd be left with an 8 right? Because it'd be 8 times 7 all the way to 1, 7 all the way to 1. The 7 to the 1 cancel out. We're just left with an 8 there. Here, the 7 factorials cancel out, and then 3 goes into 9 3 times. So we'd be left with a plus 3, like that. All right? So sometimes just do some work on the side. If you're a little confused, you could just write stuff out. You can even write out all the elements to if you're more comfortable initially, and then the more you practice this, the more you'll get the hang of it. And then if you remember the 6 factorial plus 7 factorial, that was, we factored out the 6 factorial, we were left with a 1 plus 7, which was an 8 down here. And so now this is looking a lot better, so we'd have 3 times 7 factorial times 8 plus 3 is 11. And then we got 6 factorial times 8. Now from here, 7 factorial over 6 factorial, what does that simplify to? Well, we'd have 7 times 6 all the way to 2 times 1. And then we'd have 6 factorial, which is 6 times 5 all the way to 2 and 1, like that. So notice the 6 factorials cancel out, right? All those elements. And we're just left with a 7. So this, and there's a 7 left over, so we'd end up with 3 times 7 times 11 all over 8. Then unfortunately, 3, 7, or 11, they don't simplify with the 8. So 3 times 7, which is 21, times 11, which would give us 231 over 8. And then this fraction here doesn't simplify any further. So that's what the answer would be. And then if you have a calculator, you can check your answer. But make sure you know how to do this without a calculator in case on a test your prof or teacher doesn't want you using a calculator and something like this comes up. So 231 over 8 is the final answer.